Major college sports might be the most exclusively American part of the sports experience throughout the world. Foreigners do not understand why we love college sports so much in this country. And I think it's that for a lot of people, college sports really represent a pure, fun, love of the game bastion of the sports world. Both in terms of how the games look while they're being played, and how the fans and communities respond to them. Particularly in places that don't have professional sports. Which is why the state that we're in now is very untenable. We are in the wild, wild west of college athletics. The ecosystem we are in now truly cannot sustain itself. You guys have really seemed to like this conversational video format where I just talk about my opinion on something. I did it with the state of the NBA when I promised this discussion as well. I did it with Major League Baseball's salary cap talk, and I complained about the Mets and Jets like this. I do love college athletics. I worked in them in college as well, but we're losing the recipes of what made college sports so special. And the first two dominoes to fall there were in major changes to NIL and the transfer portal. For those unaware, college athletes can now make money directly from the schools even for their play, which was the biggest no-no in college athletics for a very, 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 very long time before that. Granted, the previous system was nonsense and completely rigged against the athletes, very unfairly, but we're now at a point where it's boomeranged back around to not knowing how to handle the idea of the athletes making money. Particularly when it comes from the schools themselves, which kind of defeated the original point of having it just be extra for the athletes to make money based on who they are and their status, literally their name, image, and likeness, not their play. But that very quickly devolved into schools just having to pay for the best talent, which I'm already foreseeing that the comments are, well, they were doing it under the table the whole time. Well, now that it's legal, it's somehow more out of control. And by out of control, I really mean it, because we don't have precedents for how to deal with a lot of these disputes yet, most notably when the kids sign contracts with the schools for money. Former Duke University quarterback Darian Mensah transferred to the University of Miami when he was under contract for another paid year at Duke. And you can actually understand this, considering Darian Mensah signed an agreement saying he would play for Duke and receive money for Duke football. It ended with Mensah going to Miami, and no real clear answers on what any of this means. Meaning, we still haven't really formally decided if contracts being enforceable is a thing in paying the players. I don't know if that's sustainable. Someone's gonna be really mad and make a huge stink when a kid leaves over a monetary dispute. We just haven't seen a pissed off enough school or booster yet. I'm kind of afraid for whichever kid incurs that wrath first. And similarly, in terms of Darian Mensah switching schools, he was able to do that because of what's called the transfer portal, which now opens up the abilities for kids to switch schools without penalty. In the past, if you wanted to transfer Division 1 to Division 1, you had to sit out a year at the second school to prove that you really meant it that you were leaving. That no longer exists, and you see plenty of kids who will play for 4 schools in 4 years. Look, I'm actually pretty pro-transfer portal, all things considered, because I usually default to the logic of if coaches can leave with no consequence, so should the players, considering a lot of kids go there for opportunities presented by coaches. They're loyal to people who are going to use the school to benefit the kid's life. So when that person goes away, the attachment to the school does too for a lot of kids. That was happening for decades. I think, though, my biggest issue with the transfer portal is that it has yet to give the smaller school much of a fighting chance. Just using 2 arbitrary schools here, let's say you're Middle Tennessee State, and you have a really great player, and then the University of Florida is like, oh, we want you and we're going to pay you a lot more to transfer here. When they do it, inevitably, because their lives are better, Middle Tennessee ain't getting a damn thing from it. I have seen a proposal before from a coach at Grambling State to incur kind of a transfer fee to the smaller school as like a reward for finding and developing the kid. And I really do think something like that is necessary, because if you just have even Power 5 schools becoming feeders to upper echelon schools, why bother recruiting at all? Or fielding competitive teams. And any small school that has flash-in-the-pan success is guaranteed to still be flash-in-the-pan success because you can't retain your kids. No such thing as sustainable program building anymore when they're all just going for the highest bidder, and you can't really blame them. Oh, and I know I mentioned something about coaches leaving. We are going to get back to a big point about that. Before I forget, just hold on a little tighter. I actually think, though, that there's now a new challenger in the biggest threat to the integrity of how the teams look in college athletics, and that's mainly happening in basketball right now. This year, there were multiple players with significant pro experience trying to come back to college, one of whom succeeded. Charles Bediako was out of college for 3 years and then flamed out of the G League and went back to college athletics. Even just allowing this bizarre Twilight Zone world where you can regress levels and become a pro who goes back to school, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of amateurism in college athletics that they've been built on forever. What makes the decision to let Bediako come back even stranger is that they let him come back only for a second, and then they were like, nope, we can't do this, it's not gonna work, we're gonna disallow you. But then why'd you let him come back in the first place? And why'd you make that decision mid-season? And why does the school just get to keep the wins they had when they had a now ineligible grown man out there? I think, though, what's even worse than Bediako is what Amari Bailey's up to. Amari Bailey played 10 NBA games for the Charlotte Hornets. More than 10% of a full NBA season. And he's like, you know what? I think I'm gonna go back to college. This is an NBA player. The precedent has to be nipped in the bud right away. You know, LeBron never went to college. He probably still has college eligibility. What if LeBron just feels like going to play? What if in football, Wyoming is just like, yeah, Josh Allen had another year, let's bring him back. Stanford's got another year of Christian McCaffrey. It was like the single most obvious point of college athletics, that you still have to, be a college student and have that non-pro status to play in college. It was the biggest no-brainer of the system. But now eligibility is becoming a weird concept in general. Like, eligibility is almost a figment of our imaginations. I think of Ole Miss quarterback Trinidad Chambliss. Chambliss wanted a 6th year, which previously wasn't allowed, and it was thought that he was just going to have to go to the NFL because he maxed out the amount of time he had in college. Rulings, like legal ones, said, no, you can't do this. Then they appealed to a judge who went to Ole Miss, by the way. All he had to say was yes, and now Trinidad Chambliss could play. That simple. And then, we have Mr. Navy baseball player. A baseball player at the U.S. Naval Academy is arguing that it's a matter of national security to let him continue playing baseball. That is a, very new one of a kind, I believe, and maybe the most interesting logic we've seen thus far to get to continue to play. Was the previous system unfair and stacked against the players? It absolutely was. But right now, the common theme really is Wild Wild West to me, because there's so many bizarre implications for all of this. Like, there's so many threads of precedent trying to be set, and all of them have very strange, severe repercussions if we let one of them squeak through, which you've seen that if one judge from your alma mater approves you after previously not being approved, you get to still play. We've seen that if you're a 10-game NBA player, you can just sneak your way back into school. I don't want to specifically harp on just the players, though, because they are not remotely the only ones at fault for this untenable ecosystem. There's one man I do want to stare at, though, for a problem here. Actually, you know what? Hold on. You guys hear about what Lane did? Lane Kiffin was the head coach of Ole Miss football, the same team Trinidad Chambliss played for. Ole Miss qualified for the college football playoff. They were really good this year. Lane Kiffin had to leave them to a team in conference before the playoff. College sports thrives off this idea of also schools poaching coaches from one another, and the calendar for it is extremely messed up. There was John Summerall's team, Tulane, who let him stay at Tulane until going to Florida because he was going to finish out the season with his guys. LSU and Kiffin and Ole Miss were not in such a welcoming arrangement. Because Kiffin was effectively just selling out for more money, changing schools in the same conference, Ole Miss didn't want to let him stay. It was this whole sob story everyone's talking about, how, oh, they wouldn't let me stay. Well, why would they, considering you've already made your peace with getting out of there and snaking the team for a rival for decades, more than decades. They've been rivals since they've had football practically in there. So, Mr. Lane Kiffin is now a pariah in Mississippi because of a system that was really set up in place to be exploited. You do not see this in non-college sports. You don't see coaches bailing during the playoff run and not having to be a part of it. And also getting paid from their old team winning when you're also not there anymore. Imagine if your ex got $500,000 because you scored a nice date with somebody new. It also says a lot about how conference realignment is so disastrous in that even the schools in the same tier are not held equally in so many ways, both NIL and coaching-wise, that they're still selling out for top bidders in the same conference. The whole point of the conferences is supposed to create parity. We don't have that anymore. Duke and Miami with Darian Mensah are conference opponents. Ole Miss and LSU conference opponents. You see that with these ever-expanding conferences. That's a whole issue in and of itself. Rutgers and USC conference games, for instance. Really, it's selling out just to create more money for the business of college athletics, which they're succeeding at. College athletics are more profitable than ever before, but, you know, almost none of that benefits women's sports. Kind of a shame how there's hundreds of women's teams all over the country doing great work that you just don't see because no one goes to the games because there's no money for them. They just bump up football and basketball because that's what makes money, and there's plenty of interesting, outstanding female athletes that you'll just never see, and you don't see them uplifted with the money that comes in. I'm going to change my shirt, though, and then we're going to get back to college football. Shifting back to the Heisenberg shirt after Lane, what's the difference, am I right? I find it somewhere between very funny and very sad that we haven't figured out the college football playoff yet. 3 years of the 12-team playoff now, and 3 different formats, because it still causes everybody to fight with each other. Most notably, Notre Dame fighting with the NCAA itself. They didn't get in to the college football playoff this past year, largely because when it became close to Miami and Notre Dame, who Miami beat, and they finished with basically equal resumes after that, Miami got the lead at the last day for beating them, effectively, even though they beat them the first game of the year, which opens up a whole nother discussion about how people only let the first game of the year matter at the end, even though the rankings didn't reflect that all season. For the record, I was very pro Miami getting in for Notre Dame. Because of that, the games on the field have to matter. Notre Dame took a very interesting response to the games on the field have to matter, though. They cut a deal with the NCAA that if they're in the top 12 of the rankings at the end of the season, no matter what, they have to be in the playoff. So we're cutting deals to get playoff access before the season even starts, just asking like, hey, if we get to be one of the 12 best teams according to a group of guys on the committee, we have to be in. Which that's not how the system works, considering there's the conference champions, which Notre Dame doesn't even want to be a part of a conference because they think they're better than everybody else and can cut deals to get in the playoff before the season even starts. And because of these conference deals, you also have lower mid-major schools who get smoked by top-tier programs who are only there just to have more conference diversity. Darian Mensah and Duke football also prove that winning your conference basically means nothing, that if 8-5 Duke can be a conference champion and not make the playoff, shows you that conference championships really don't matter because no one took Duke seriously outside of Duke's locker room. A 5-loss conference champion is ridiculous, and they were only there ahead of Miami, a team that proved themselves to be much, much better than Duke, because Duke and Miami, conference teams, 2 conference teams with 2 conference common opponents. That's how out of control the conference realignment and expansion is I was talking about earlier, that it creates these crazy systems where there cannot be parity. No one plays the same teams or has the same resources in the same conference, so how do you hold everybody equally? They tried it by just having conference championships get the auto bids, but the ACC's automatic bid got lapped by 2 mid-majors. Do you want it to be the 12 best teams, or do you want it to be inclusive to everybody? We've still never really, decided that. Because if it is the 12 most talented teams, you don't really like this answer, but it probably is mostly a bunch of SEC teams, Ohio State and Michigan, maybe Notre Dame, and 1 ACC team. But that's not a very fun, inclusive playoff, so we include these other teams that aren't as good and aren't as talented that get destroyed in the college football playoff now, and we still haven't figured out whether or not we like that, because We're still fighting over the format of the college football playoff. I'm sure there's plenty of college basketball fans who are like, thank goodness our sport is safe. We have March Madness, it's still a marquee part of the college sports experience. It's probably the highlight of the college sports calendar every year, including the college football playoff. But college basketball is unsafe too, and it's for a reason that was much more prominent in the NBA video, and I'm stunned it took this long to mention it, but oh my goodness, are college sports being undercut by gambling right now. It's been reported that not 1, not 2, not 3, but 29 college basketball games were effectively rigged by bettors. 29! Because these college kids are still very susceptible to large amounts of money coming in from bettors when these kids aren't professionals yet. Even with the large sums of money college kids can make, money is money for an 18 to 20-year-old kid. So they are very vulnerable athletes that I feel bad for to be preyed on by just large sums of money from the gambling industry that can destroy the products on the floor. And it's not just a basketball issue. Alabama lost its baseball coach because of a betting scandal. I also feel for these 18 to 20-year-old kids practically who are going to get death threats by 40-year-old men because parlays didn't hit. Again, what I started with at the beginning is that college sports are supposed to be pure for love of the game things that communities and players rally around because they're not professional sports. A lot of these athletes are done after this. After their years in schools, they're going to go work at Walmart or something. That's not condescending to Walmart, I swear, but it's more of like, not every kid gets to be the superstar. There's so few pro roster spots compared to college roster spots. The overwhelming majority will simply never become professional athletes, which is why the idea of everyone making more money and having it be more valuable and cherishing that experience and making college sports much more of a big sustainable deal for the kids who make this economy work, sustained. It is a good thing. In theory, it is a good thing. But now when you introduce the gambling aspect of it, and weird degenerates can lose everything just because an 18-year-old freshman doesn't have a great day, and that 18-year-old freshman is susceptible to the wrath of desperate, angry men, I don't like the precedent that sets, and I'm scared for future kids, probably even my own, because I would love to have a child someday who has a chance to play college athletics, because it is special to me and a lot of other people, and it creates some of the best memories of kids' lives. We should not be ruining this. And the we is everybody. We as in the spectator, we as in the schools, we as in the players, we as in the administrators. I do firmly believe we are in an untenable ecosystem. I've used that phrase before, and it's because I mean that the way things are cannot last without everything imploding on itself. It is a dangerous, slippery slope that needs resolution now. And I don't really have very many answers. This is a very defeating outlook that I'm taking on. I do want to have the discussion with you, though, same as in the NBA video. I want to hear what you think. What I do think, though, personally, is that the genie is out of the bottle on a lot of these things. You can't say, no more NIL, no more transfer portal. That's a decision that is very firmly sticking. We just have not figured out the consequences of that decision years later. We still have disputes and lawsuits and controversies and a lack of balance and a lack of parity and more money than people know what to do with. And it's creating hurt that we can't even understand yet. So again, I ask you, how do you improve college sports? What actionable steps do you take? Because there is no one solution here, and I'm not going to be the one who has them. Not to go all cornball on you, but it really is going to take all of us to figure something out here. College sports are too special, its athletes are too special and too interesting to be plummeted down like this. They're bogged down by the new world and new expectations that's supposed to be uplifting them. Sure, it is monetarily, but money doesn't buy success and happiness. Well, maybe for some teams it does. I don't really have a closing thought off the top of my head, so I'm just going to say, please watch college baseball.